Hey there, Autism Fitness founder Eric Chessen, leading the movement for movement and bringing you another edition of Autism Fitness Tuesday training, where I take a concept, a strategy, something that we use in our Autism Fitness curriculum for the benefit of our autism and neurodivergent athletes and bring it to you in a workable way so that you can enhance your fitness or adapted PE program, whether you're working with individuals or groups, whether you're working in a home, school, clinic, gym. These will work in any environment. So in this edition of Autism Fitness Tuesday training, I have to stop myself and ask you to like, subscribe, and share this video with people for whom it might make a difference. I got that in. I was going to forget it, but I didn't. But one thing definitely not to forget is that sometimes we need to structure our sessions a little bit differently. So this Tuesday training is going to be about some of the session programming alternatives that we might use to structure a session while not losing the main focus of the program. So I'm going to break that down in all three areas of the PAC profile. The PAC profile, of course, is physical, adaptive, and cognitive. It is our standard operating procedure in Autism Fitness to assess and address skills as they relate to exercise and physical activity. They can also be used for other physical activities as well, sports, games, martial arts, anything, because it provides us with scalability and a way to establish baselines so we know what to do next. Anyway, when we have an athlete who wants to do something else during a session, or they may want to integrate a different type of game, or they seem a little bit dysregulated for that day, we have to make some programming choices around what to keep and maybe what to push back. Of course, we want to bring intentionality to it and make sure that we are establishing and carrying out goals as well. Now, it's not to say that we're going to meet this 100% of the time in every session, because, of course, there are some particular challenges that come along with our neurodivergent life skill athletes, and we never want to sacrifice the trust and rapport that we have or developing with an athlete in order to get things done, because we're looking at long-term development and long-term success. So we always want to come back to the athlete having as positive an experience as they can each session. That, however, has to be balanced out with the fact that the session is the session and we're trying to get certain things accomplished. Of course, we want this to be a partnership with our athletes, and sometimes we have to figure out and navigate some challenging situations in order for that to be the case. Now, I'll give you one scenario that I had with one of my athletes just today. My athlete, I've noticed recently, has a long latency between being on break or having a preferred activity and getting back to the fitness activity itself. Now, the way that we typically structure our sessions in autism fitness programming is we start with our power exercises, our medicine ball throws, our sandbell slams, and then we go into our strength exercises, our squats, our pushes, our pulls, our carries, and we want adequate time for the athlete to perform the appropriate amount of exercises and the appropriate amount of volume, so sets and repetitions. Why? Because that's going to produce a training effect. And in order to get that training effect where there is an acute physiological change, i.e. the body getting stronger, motor planning developing, and the athlete developing that stamina and resilience, there's a certain amount, there's a threshold that we need to cross in order for that to get done, particularly with our athletes who might be diagnosed with low tone or demonstrate general core strength deficits and need a lot more modified exercises in order to get towards the point where they have independent mastery of each exercise. So in autism fitness speak, we call this meeting standard, where they can perform a squat all the way down for 10 reps with control, an overhead press all the way up and down with control, et cetera, et cetera. So there are some things that obviously we want to accomplish. However, that might be at times at odds with the athlete's adaptive profile. So physiologically, the athlete may have numerous motor and strength deficits that we certainly want to cover. in the fitness session. However, oftentimes we are up against either dysregulation, or the athlete is having a challenging time, or the athlete is getting distracted, or they want to do something else. So one of the things that we need to build in is to maybe modify the session so that the athlete is getting what they need physiologically, and also it is providing the appropriate reinforcement for them to stay on task as much as they possibly can today, and that may change for the better in the next session. So my example today, my athlete was having a long latency between his breaks and then going back to his exercises, and this has been going on for a few sessions now. So what I decided to do was to make it backwards day. So when he came up to the board and the visual schedule of each exercise, what I did was I wrote it out. It's backwards day. So instead of starting with the power exercises, which typically take up a chunk of our programming time, I started with the strength exercises. Why did I do that? Because the power exercises are great. Of course, they're going to develop the ability to move faster, produce force, root to the ground with the feet in ways that are conducive to some of the movements that we need to do on a daily basis. Tossing out a heavy garbage, or tossing laundry into a bin, pushing open a heavy door. We need these power-based capabilities. However, strength exercises are where it's at in terms of having the highest carryover to activities of daily living. So what was happening was we were taking up way too much session time performing the power exercises, especially with the time in between each set that that my athlete was getting either dysregulated or just taking extra time to come back to the session. And so what I did in creating backwards day was I rearranged the schedule to favor the strength exercises first, because if we could complete all of those in the time allotted to the session, then it would have the best possible outcome for that athlete. So rather than say, oh, we're halfway through this session already. Of course, I don't wear my watch today, but we're halfway through this session and we've only gotten through 3 out of the 4 power exercises, and now I feel rushed as a coach, and now I'm trying to situate my athlete so that he can complete the rest of these exercises. I flipped it. Easy enough to do, and the athlete enjoyed the fact that it was backwards day. He thought that was really funny and fun. He actually turned his t-shirt backwards, so he was all about it. And so we started out with sled pushes, and then we did heavy carries, the 2 exercises that we usually save for the last portion of this session. So great, he already got his sled push in, and he already got his heavy carry in, and now we got to focus on squats and overhead presses and standing band rows. We had plenty of time to satisfy and to complete 2 or 3 sets of each of those exercises, so that I know that athlete is getting sufficient volume, the appropriate amount of sets and repetitions, in order to build that training effect, to build the strength, to build the stamina, to build better motor planning. That is an absolute necessity. There's no other way around it, because physiologically, we're not going to have any significant change unless we have a certain amount of quality sets and repetitions. And if we don't get to them, then we're not going to have them. So it's something that we need to prioritize in our programming. So by flipping it and doing backwards day, I was able to get to those exercises first, and anything else after that was great. So we got to the power exercises towards the end, but I didn't have to worry about, well, what happens if we don't have enough time for squats, and what happens if we don't have enough time for band rows, and what happens if we don't have enough time for heavy carries, because these are the most important exercises in our curriculum, in our program. So if we break this down from physical, adaptive, and cognitive, hence the PAC profile perspective, physically, now the program, just by being flipped, by being backwards day, allowed us more time to perform the exercises. It gave me more coaching and instructional time. It gave the athlete more time to participate in those exercises, even with having a little bit of extension on those breaks and the ability to take extra time to do some reinforcing stuff with the bands on the side, because he likes playing around with the resistance bands and having them dance. So great, I can build that extra time in, at least for now, knowing that we're going to be able to do all of those really important exercises. From an adaptive perspective, this gave us the ability to have a little bit of leeway, so it was more reinforcing for him, because rather than trying to rush him, which never works, and say, okay, we need to get to this next exercise because the countdown clock is something that is typically anxiety producing. So rather than say, oh, we only have 15 minutes, oh, we only have 14 minutes, oh, we only have 7 minutes to get the rest of these things done, we could take our time. So I don't have to elevate that athlete's level of anxiety or the pressure on them to complete the exercise. What I did was structure it in a way where we could build some of that extra time in. And then finally, from a cognitive standpoint, the athlete understood that this is the exercise order that we're doing today. So even in terms of giving him choice between two different exercises, it was, do you want to do squats first or do you want to do band pull downs first? I mean, even though in the past we've done it with the power exercises, our medicine ball throws, our sandbell slams first, this way I was still able to give him choice, so he understood the structure of the session. It was just a little bit, turned around. From a physical perspective, this does not at all change anything in terms of skill development. We don't have to absolutely do power exercises first. That's generally it's a best practice when it's a best practice. So when it works, it works. But sometimes we have to be a little bit more creative about programming in order to get in those essential or foundational exercises. Now, note when I say creative, it doesn't mean that we're going to choose a completely different set of exercises in this session, because that's not going to help develop those fundamental strength skills. Because if we have too much variety, then the athlete is not going to have enough practice with each movement pattern to get really good at it. So all I needed to do was change up the order of the exercises as opposed to change up the exercises themselves. And that allowed us to build in time for him to do some of the other games or preferred activities that he likes to do on his break. We even took an opportunity and he wanted to do backwards medicine ball throws. Not something that we typically have as an exercise in our programming, but it was something that we could do as a reinforcer. So first band pull downs and then backwards overhead throws. This was something that he really enjoyed, so it worked towards the adaptive functioning and increasing his motivation to complete the strength exercises. And it worked for me because now we can get in 2 or 3 or even 4 sets of those band pull downs, whereas in previous sessions, not only were we doing 1 or at most 2 sets, but we were running out of time when we were doing it. So these are some considerations around programming, but they're really important, even though they can be some small changes, because it enables us to have a much more productive, much better, much more effective program overall, whether we're working with an individual or we're working with groups. So we have to be objective about the programs that we're delivering. What does it look like, on paper or on a screen or on a dry erase board versus what are we actually accomplishing? And when we see that by just changing a couple of the changing the exercise order around just a little bit, that we get a lot more accomplished, so that that athlete progresses faster, so that the skills are acquired much sooner, and so that that athlete starts generalizing those skills to their activities of daily living, which is the exact reason we are doing this in the first place. So I hope this has been helpful for you. I'd love to know how this influences your programming, or if this has been a light bulb moment for you. Please leave that in the comments below. And if you have any ideas about a topic that you'd like me to cover in a future edition of Autism Fitness Tuesday training, leave that in the comments below also. I'd love to know what you're thinking so that I can help out, whether we're talking about programming, positive behavior support, or how to set up a session for success. I'm Autism Fitness founder Eric Chessen, leading the movement for movement. If you are ready to join and become an Autism Fitness Certified Pro, all you need to do is go to autismfitness.com. You can download the course syllabus, and you can even register and start your coursework today anywhere in the world. Thank you very much for watching.